All right, let's record. All right, well done. All right, guys, let's get started. Now, what I wanted to do is we're on 10A1. I wanted to dedicate this shiur. I don't know if Gavin knows him or Arthur does, but there are two people that we want to dedicate the shiur to. The one is Liron Mazor, and he's in ICU with COVID. And
I actually know him.
You know him. He's a good guy. When I first kept Shabbos, I was meant to stay at a Kiva Bibi and a Bava Kamma that one evening. My first Shabbos I was going to keep. And for some reason, I got it mixed up where they were going to live or whatever. And Laron found me in shul and invited me to come to him for supper and stay over. He's a good guy.
He's a very good guy.
So Laron is the one. And then Kevin's cousin is having treatment in the UK for chemotherapy for cancer.
Kevin Mathel.
Yeah, Kevin Mathel's cousin or relative. I'm not sure.
And I was with them in February, so I speak to the family regularly. So
the two Hebrew names that we want to do a refuah for, Kevin, thank you for the names, is Liron ben Sarit and Shlomo Eliezer ben Sarah. Right, guys, I'm going to have you in mind for the brachos. You look as bad in the morning as you do in the afternoon. I thought the afternoon everybody would look better. Okay, let's begin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu l'sukkot divrei Torah. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Torah b'finu v'fi b'cha beit Yisrael v'niyeh nachnu v'tzetzinu v'tzetzim b'cha beit Yisrael kolanu yodei shemecha v'lomdei Torah k'ech lishma Baruch atah Adonai l'mei Torah l'mo Yisrael. Amen. Let's start us. Nice to see you guys. Just give me 1 sec. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick summary of where the case started in 9b3. So what happens here is that the Brasa brings a lengthy discussion in terms of the stringencies and leniencies, and they compare all the damages to each other. Okay? So the rabbis taught in a brisa, in some aspects, ox is more stringent than pit. And in some aspects, pit is more stringent than ox. So before I tell you what it is, do any of you remember in what case ox was more stringent than pit? Kev, you want to take a go at it? Just any reason.
If the ox goes onto someone's private property and consumes.
No, we're looking at why ox would be more stringent than pit. In what cases is it more stringent than pit?
What cases?
Yeah. In what aspects?
Well, it does damage in its normal. It damages someone else's property. Damages someone's.
No, pit's also responsible. All right, we'll get there. We'll get
there. I understand it because pit is just you have to come across it. It's not.
Okay, that's it. So Kevin, hang on, guys. Kevin is onto something. So it's big. You have to come across it, meaning it's stationary. Therefore, an ox goes forth to damage. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so if an ox goes forward to damage, that is where a ox is more stringent than a pit. It is one of the ones. Good, very good.
And it's deliberate.
No, we're talking not in the case deliberate. We're talking the case, for example, of Keren. But you are 100% right. Is that an ox is a damager that goes forth to damage, whereas a pit is stationary. So in that aspect, it's more likely that an ox will cause damage than a pit, much more likely. Very well done. Arthur and Gavin, do you have a suggestion each also?
I was thinking, what about with utensils where, there's a utensil where in a pit, you're not covered for hidden utensils. I was reading up something yesterday about, but it's something, if you fall in a pit, ox falls in a pit and the utensils break. Well, and your items on your ox break, but it doesn't die. It's only 9 tava.
No, Arthur, you're mixing up 4 different aspects. Just keep it simple. Keep it simple. But give me another example, and then we'll clarify yours.
Well, that's an example I had at the moment that came to my head.
Okay. So let's just give Arthur a point in terms of the fact that with ox damage, with ox damage, if an ox kicks, oh my gosh, I've got the cat coming to me now as well. I've heard your cat crying, Arthur. It's now coming on my laptop. So let's say that you're correct in one manner, in that if an ox damages something by kicking a utensil, you're responsible. In that case, it's more stringent, whereas a pit, you are exempt.
Okay.
That makes sense. So there you are right. There you are right. Hang on, there's the cat here.
I can't even see it, Dan. It vanished.
In the way. The cat got in the way. Sorry, guys. Okay. So, Arthur, you are right there. All right. Gavin, any suggestion?
Okay, so those two I would have said as well, but the only other one that I can think of maybe, sorry, I did prep, but I can't remember 100%. I'm a bit dazed at the moment. But my thing would probably be if an ox kills somebody, it's more stringent.
Well, you have to say in what way. You have to give me something.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I know it's to do with that, but I'm battling to recollect everything.
Okay.
Arthur, do you have a suggestion on that? More specific?
It's what I read last night. If an ox kills somebody, the ox can't be used at all. It becomes it can't be used.
No benefit can be derived.
There's no benefit to it.
Okay, so good. Arthur and Kevin were both on the same point, is that ox becomes lo hanoah, means you cannot use it for benefit. Hanoah is benefit. Lo hanoah, it can't be used for benefit. So what happens is as follows. Okay, let me just explain this to you, is that before the ox becomes killed, let's see why the ox becomes killed, is that only if an ox is moored, okay, and the owner's been warned multiple times, this ox has done habitual damage, and the ox then kills somebody. Then the ox becomes moored, which means you don't pay off the gufa of the animal, you pay off the choicest of land, and you pay full payment, not from the gufa of the animal, and not half payment. So those two leniencies fall away. So it's moored. And in addition to that, if the ox is guilty of killing a human being and that sentence was finalized, the ox is forbidden for benefit, and the owner pays a kofir payment. So a kofir payment, we learned in the fourth daf, is that his bidei shemayim, his liable at the hands of heaven for negligence of killing that person, because this is not a first-time offense. And therefore, he has to pay a kofir payment in terms of penalty for him, which is a compensation to the family for that sort of damage in addition to the other payments. And the actual term used is called naki. So naki means it cleans the person's soul, where they're not liable in the next word, but it also means they're cleaned from any monetary benefit of the ox. That's what Rashi brings in Gemara, Bava Kamma 41a. So they cannot derive any benefit from the ox, because once the ox was killed, they can't sell the flesh and recover some of their losses. They actually lose that full value of that ox. So that was it. And then if it kills a Canaanite slave, you're liable to a 30 shekel payment. Good. Now, one thing quickly.
There's another one. Damon.
No, I told you. You're liable to a 30 shekel payment.
Yeah, but there's additional difference between a pit and I read it yesterday. There's an additional difference where it's more stringent. It's to do with if an ox attacks another ox that belongs to the temple.
That's way later. That's way later.
Okay, but it is
way later.
Is a difference between the two.
Yeah, but that's way later, and there's a reason, and it's brought as an exception of Rav Yehuda. So let's just get it clear. So the ox is more stringent than pit, that if it kills a person, it pays the kofir payment. Remember, that that the rabbis say that you exempt if a pit kills a person, because the term is, if you have a look, it says in Shmot chapter 21 verse 33, if a pit causes the death of a man, the owner is not liable, for the Torah states, and an ox falls into it. So this is expounded to say in the 28th daf in B, to exclude a man that falls into a pit. This is according to Russian Tosfot. Okay? So if a man falls in the pit, it's you excluded from payment. Rabbi Yehuda says that you do have to pay if a person falls in the pit, but the rabbis say that you don't. Okay? So finally, a pit, the only way a pit is more stringent than ox is it's prone to damage from inception, and ox is not. That's why it's tum. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
And the pit is always muad from inception. Number one, it's muad, meaning full payment from the choicest of property. And then secondly, in addition to that, it's prone to damage from inception. Okay, good. So any other questions before we go to the 10th daf?
No, I'm good.
Okay, guys, are you good?
Yeah, thank you.
Gav, that will be addressed as a separate question, but it has to be in context with the daf that we're doing. Are you with me? So when you're doing revision, you've got to keep each case clear with the manner in which it's brought as to why, and why there's going to be a question. But well done for remembering some of those aspects. Very good. Okay.
And
Yeah?
quick question. Isn't today your grand's Yortzeit, or is it tomorrow?
It's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. Yeah, I put it on pause, so I'm just waiting.
Thanks.
So I'm going to start it now. Sorry.
So if we're back online, we're going to the 10th daf in A1. Now, it says in some aspects, before we go, before we go on the 10th daf, we're going to bring aspects of the daf of 5 to 5b2, 5b3, and 6a1 when we discuss the difference between ox and pit and fire, but it'll come up respectively. All right. So in some aspects, ox is more stringent than fire, and in some aspects, fire is more stringent than ox. In some aspects, ox is more stringent than fire. So let's see why. Okay. So we just learned it in the 9th daf. What did we learn, guys, in the 9th daf? Right?
That in some aspects,
Go ahead, Arthur.
That was comparing pit to.
No. What we learned.
People that don't have the mental capacity shouldn't be given charge of something.
Exactly, Kevin. You are right on the money.
That's right. Well done.
Exactly. So, ox is more stringent than fire, is because with pit and ox, if you give any of the mentally incompetent people, whether it's a minor, somebody that's a deaf mute with brain retardation, or in addition to that, an insane person, to take care of an ox or a pit, you're responsible for payment for choosing an inappropriate custodian. But for fire, you're not responsible. That's excellent, Kevin. With ox, it's more stringent because you're liable for the kofar payment. You also cannot get benefit from the ox once you kill it with a kofar payment, once the court kills it. Then you're liable for 30 shekels for the ox killing a Canaanite slave. Okay, so that's very, very good. These are stringencies that are not true of fire. Now, fire is more stringent than ox. Guys, why is ox more stringent? Why is fire more stringent than ox?
Ox does its deliberate action. A fire, it's a natural course of events that wind causes to spread. It's not.
It moves forward.
Yeah, that you're right. I think.
Okay, no. Both ox and fire go forth and damage. Those two are the same. Those two are the same. So in what way is fire more stringent than ox? Okay, guys, think of what ox we're talking about here. We're talking about, I'll give you a clue, Keren. Okay? Keren. So what is a fire muad from inception or not?
Yes.
Yes. Therefore.
Okay, so so that's the difference. Okay, that's right. That's one of them.
Okay, so Kevin,
it's time.
What?
It's time at the beginning.
A fire is muad from its outset, and an ox is tam. That's
ox
correct.
Is tam.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So a fire is more stringent because you're paying the full payment, whereas ox, if it's a tam ox, you're paying half payment and you're paying from the gufar of an animal. Excellent, excellent. Now, guys, this is all chazorah in what we've done. Okay. Now, now let me just give you some heads up here. Obviously, the owner of the fire is not liable to pay kofir payment. Why not? Or the 30 shekels for the case of a slave, if the fire causes the death of a person. Why
not? Maybe because fire is not from the beginning. Fire is not.
It's not
able to. It needs something to get it going. Put it that way.
And
therefore, it's not.
No, but why?
It needs material to burn, so it has to.
No. All right, let me just ask you guys something. There's somebody that's standing, and would you be able to see a fire coming in advance by feeling the heat and seeing it from quite a distance away?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's similar to a pit.
Exactly.
Where it's your own fault if you fall in, and it's your own fault if you get burned by a fire.
You've got a bit of a warning. With the ox that goes mad, you can't, especially if the ox has been tame and relaxed and allowed in a public place. The whole reason why you pay half payment is that you can't expect an ox to go crazy. But when an ox does, you've got no forewarning. And therefore, a person's not aware. Whereas a fire, you see it coming. But then you should say, why would you not pay? Then you would pay a coffee farm payment for the ox. And we're saying you only pay the coffee payment for an ox. If an ox kills a person, if the ox was muad, meaning the owner was warned more than 3 times that this ox is a habitual gorer. Okay? But in that case, the person doesn't know that got damaged by the ox. Only the owner of the ox knows that. And he doesn't have the sense to assume that the ox is going to go rogue. Whereas a blaze, you can see the approaching. Okay, good. Now,
Damon,
yeah?
I'll just interrupt for 1 sec.
Sure.
You said warn 3 times, but after the 3rd time, it becomes a muad. It is tam. After the 3rd time, but you're saying there's 3 warnings? The 3rd warning means it's damaged twice.
No. So there's a machloikis. It's a good question. We're going to learn that the default position so far, what we learned is more than 3 times, meaning the 4th time it becomes muad. But there's a discussion later in the Gemara. Is it on the 3rd time or the 4th time? But so far we've seen it's more than 3 times. Okay, let's cover a little bit of ground.
One thing like, for example, on Lag BaOmer.
Yes.
If you ever see a fire, you can't get within that fire because it gets so big. You about 20 meters, 30 meters from the fire, you can feel it. So it's like,
I agree. I mean, Damon and I once went to Osamar, and the fire was so hot we could feel it within the building of Osamar from the outside. I remember that.
Fully aware of it. It's not like sneaking up on you.
Yeah. Now there is an issue. So what happens if the owner just say somebody was tied, okay, and they couldn't escape the fire, right? And the fire killed somebody. That person was tied up. The victim was tied up, and the fire was set, and he was caught in the barn, and he couldn't escape. Why does he not have to pay the financial amount?
Because it's hidden.
Hidden, yeah.
No. Gavin, you learned this in Sanhedrin. You know this rule. What's the rule?
Because it's, okay, yeah. So, it's indirect.
Okay, so
maybe.
No. Okay, sorry, just give me 1 sec. We're talking about why do you not have to pay financial? I'm going to get you an indirect question now, but why don't you have to pay a financial payment?
Can I answer?
Yeah, of course, but I just needed to get the question.
Is it not because he's really convicted of something else, like a higher crime, like like you don't pay if you're convicted for something higher than that because it cancels out the lower thing.
Exactly. Exactly. You don't
pay money because you're going to jail. And
so there's a concept out in Sanhedrin called Kimle B'dirabba Mineh, which means that if you concurrently have a capital punishment case and you incur monetary liability, right? Then the monetary liability is waived because that person is paying with their life.
Okay.
So the lower crime. So for example, if they've got 2 death penalties, right? Then they can't kill the person twice. They always apply the more stringent death penalty to be a kapara for both crimes.
Okay.
So too, if there's a financial payment, but it has to occur simultaneously. There has to be, and some of the examples are given. So in other words, there's no monetary liability because the person is entitled to capital punishment. Kimle b'dirabba mineh. That's great. Now, Gavin, in terms of your question, the indirectness, there would be a question as to whether or not this person, in fact, could get the death penalty because it's something called groma, which is an indirect form of murder. And it's doubtful if the person would get the death penalty. And if they don't, they would have to pay the monetary liability. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but the guy's dead now, so you have to pay to his family.
Yeah, sure. But the point of it is you brought up a good case in terms of indirect. Guys, we used an example of a hitman where you pay a hitman to kill somebody. The hitman gets the death penalty. You're responsible at the hands of heaven. There's no getting away with anything. But in terms of the Sanhedrin being able to convict you, you didn't pull the trigger, and the hitman knows the law of murder. Does that make sense? So that's groma, that's indirect. So there's an issue. But then if you can't give him the capital punishment for that, you'd have to pay the monetary liability to the next of kin. Okay. And Kevin, just to you, there's a note on note 3 on 10A1 of the Schottenstein that it says an ox is considered tam for the first 3 times that it damages, as been explained numerous times. So far, this is what we've learned for the first 3 times. And then it's muad on the 4th time. But it's a discussion that will come up, so it's a good question. All right. So a fire is not prone to damage from its inception because it must be spread to the property of one's fellow. And additionally, the owner of the fire is not liable for transferring the fire to an incompetent, as well as explained above. Okay. Now, let's just go on. Guys, you're doing very, very, very well at the moment. You're remembering your chazorah well. It's coming. It's actually coming, and well done. I could have just given this, guys, I hope you don't mind the approach here of asking these questions, because I want to test you guys, because I can just give it over. But unless you remember certain things, what's the point? So I hope you don't
100%. I think the other guys are doing very well. I'm battling today, but it's fine.
It's okay.
It's fine.
But the point
I'm a bit dazed.
This question and answer thing is going to work well.
No, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. We have good days and bad days, all of us. It's fine.
Exactly. So now the brisa continues and it compares fire to pit. Now, in some cases, pit is more stringent than fire, and in some cases, fire is more stringent than pit. So in a case where pit is more stringent than fire, okay, why would that be? Guys, each of you throw me an answer. One each. Kevin, you start. I want Kevin to start because generally he's very knowledgeable, but he's like John Wayne. He's the silent type.
But you guys I hardly say anything.
Okay, but Kevin, I want to know.
It's considered more stringent.
Okay, so what I want to know is why is pit more stringent than fire? Kevin, you take a first stab at it.
A case, an example.
No. Just give me any reason why pit would be more stringent than fire. In what aspect? Any reason.
Stringent in terms of the damages, the liable, the person, the liability
stringent
for damages.
As in, it's more like, you can say either the payment is higher or it's more likely to cause damage, or there are more penalties. In what way is it more stringent than fire? In other words, more likely?
In the public domain, Rishit Rabim. Because it shouldn't be there, and people should be more cautious. People that created it, dug the pit.
So you know what? Even though it doesn't mention it here, I think it's a valid point, guys. I think
it shouldn't be there. It should. If there's no cover and it's unprotected, then. Okay.
So I would say that makes sense. But if a fire that somebody started burns in the public domain, you're responsible for all that damage also. So it's about the same. In what case is a pit more stringent than fire? Try.
So I can give you something.
I hardly speak. I don't speak much.
I know, but whatever. Just give a stab. If you're wrong,
you're
wrong.
Doesn't matter. You're doing well today, Kevin.
You're doing great.
You're on a roll.
You're on a roll.
You've really given 2 or 3 perfect answers.
Perfect.
I'm just going to guess. Why would it be more stringent than the ox?
No. We're comparing pit to fire.
Oh, fire. Okay.
And in fact, you gave me a clue with the ox, by the way. The same reason why pit could be more stringent than fire is the same reason that ox can be more stringent. You gave me a clue earlier on.
If the fire just started, maybe, then it's more stringent because it already exists.
No. But I wouldn't know why pit is more stringent than fire in this case.
If people have forewarning and they are aware of it, the pit already exists. So maybe if the pit already exists and then the fire, people are aware of it, that it started, and they have enough forewarning to disperse.
Okay, so just go on that basis.
I'm just guessing, eh?
So you're onto something there. So what Kevin is saying is that pit is prone to damage from inception. Whereas a fire is not. It could be contained privately to cook somebody's food and keep them warm. It's only if it goes out of control. Just like an ox is not prone to damage from inception. It's only fire. That's well done. That's exactly it. That's good. That's the point. Gavin?
I can only think of items. The difference. I read something yesterday on concealed items, where you I don't know, something about about utensils not being the natural form of fire to consume. So therefore, it's not the fire is not responsible for damage. Like if it damages utensils, it's different when a pit when something breaks. I'm just thinking.
I want clarity. I want you to explain it exactly. I do believe. I know you read it, but I need you to articulate it.
Okay, so with utensils, it's not the common fuel for the fire.
No, Arthur, you've touched on something but you're not relating it to the question, because what I'm asking you guys is as follows. I'm saying, in what way is pit more stringent than fire?
More stringent than fire.
Yes, I just want simple English. Guys, simple.
Okay, I'll give you one.
Okay.
So if you hand over the responsibility to a third party, like a incompetent and that, then you automatically liable. Whereby if you hand it over to pit.
Good.
Whereby with fire, if you hand it over to somebody who's incompetent or has got difficulties or whatever, semi-retarded person, somebody who just can't really take responsibility. He doesn't have the acumen for that. So in that case, that's the case. That's it. So you're liable with the pit With the fire, you're not liable.
So it's exactly the same, Kevin, as you said for ox. It's the same with pit. That's exactly right. To Kevin and Gavin, is that you both said, both with ox and pit, that if you hand it to one of somebody that is incompetent mentally because they cannot judge consequence, whether a person is deaf, mute with retardation, somebody that's insane or a minor, they're not a reliable custodian and therefore you're responsible for the damage, but with fire you are exempt. That's excellent. Both Kevin and Gavin touched on it in the two different examples. Well done, guys. Now, and Kevin touched on the fact that a pit from its very inception is prone to damage, where a fire might take time, it might require a wind, etc., etc. That makes sense. Okay, good. Now, in what way is fire more stringent than pit? Arthur, have you also got a suggestion here?
I'm blank at the moment. I'm just trying to think.
Guys, if we get cut off from Zoom, let's attach again to Zoom because this is important. I could have gone through it in 2 minutes, but it's so important that you guys have contributed to this. It's essential.
This is a better way. It's a better way of doing it because then we have to do chazorah and we have to do everything better. I can give you an answer.
I'm listening.
Okay, so if a fire consumes vessels, you're responsible for the vessels, even though it's not a fire, something that typically burns quickly in a fire. But if it's a big enough fire, vessels will burn and will be tarnished, and you are responsible. Whereby in a pit, you're not responsible for vessels that are on an animal that falls into a pit.
Fantastic.
In that respect, it's more stringent. That's one.
Fantastic.
Somebody else? I'll try to think of another one.
I think that's very good.
Yeah, well, that's the definite one. I know. The hidden objects wouldn't be the other.
No. Before we get to there, Kevin mentioned
doesn't make the one more stringent. It makes it more lenient. So it doesn't.
No. But Kevin hit on that quite well. Is that Kevin? Do you remember that you said a pit is stationary? And the fire goes forward to damage. Therefore, it's more stringent, just like ox. Just like when you mentioned this for ox. Fire is the same thing.
Oh, that's right.
Fire and ox go forward to damage. And therefore, it's more stringent than pit, who is stationary. You have to virtually fall into it. Good. Okay, so guys, you've done well. And Gavin, you're completely right. And Arthur, that's what you were touching on. But I think what you need to do when you're doing revision is actually understand what it's talking about. Do you know what I'm saying? And give it over in very, very simple language. So in other words, you've got to say, well, what is it trying to say? And ask yourself a question where you can answer it in one simple language. Like Gavin, you answered it very, very quickly, that you are exempt in a pit for utensils that cause damage, but you're not exempt in a fire. Very well done. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go on another Zoom session. How many minutes have we got left? We should have about 3 or 4 minutes. How many minutes?
4.5 minutes.
Okay. So
if you've got 4.5 minutes, can I just ask a question?
Yes.
That comment that, it was very good, the comment that Arthur made. I was very impressed about the fact that the guy had another, with regard to a fire, if a guy's tied up. But how do you know he's tied up? Maybe his foot got caught in a plow. He's in a barn and he can't get out because of that. So he doesn't have another punishment. I mean, I was very impressed. Sorry, Arthur, that was genius. But let's say he didn't have any other crime and nothing else owing to him. I mean, he wasn't, he was a regular guy and he got burnt in the fire. What happens then?
Well, that's not a case of murder. That's a result of negligence. But the point of it is there's just financial payment.
Is there financial payment then?
Yeah, of course. There is financial payment, but you don't have a coffee payment as though you're responsible at the hand of heaven for causing his murder. It was unfortunate. And for sure you have to pay for the next of kin.
Okay, and if the guy's guilty of another sin, like what Arthur said, do you still pay the family or not?
What do you mean guilty of another sin? Just reiterate, Arthur, your exact wording.
Okay, so what he's talking about is if the guy is up for murder, does he still pay the family? Which he doesn't, because he's already up for the higher thing.
Yeah.
That's his punishment.
We learned this in Sanhedrin, Gavin, Kim Leiber di Rabbi Minay.
Yeah, I'm just trying to clarify it. It's kind of what I recall. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get clarity, that's all.
Yeah. And in fact, there's a whole discussion with Rav and Rava over this very specific issue. That's why, so I'll show you where it is in Sanhedrin. Don't worry. We can always go through it.
No problem. 100%.
All right. Well, guys, by the way, we're going to reconnect on Zoom, but I'm very impressed with all of you. Even you are very, very impressed.
Even me. Thanks, James. Even me.
I mean that because Gavin has done a lot of time in Sanhedrin, which gives him a competitive edge. No. Kevin's done time in Bava Kamma, which gives him a competitive edge. And you, being new to it, are still making expressive Kedushin, which is unexpected for somebody that doesn't have very amount of practice. So when I say even for you, I don't mean because you're less intelligent. It's just because you're less experienced in Gemara that you're still able to keep up and do very well. So I think you're all doing very nicely. Honestly, Arthur, you're doing nice. You've just
I think Kevin and Arthur did great today. Really,
my thing is, I do have a problem with getting back sometimes to articulating myself. That's always been my challenge. When you ask me a question, I have to think, because it's difficult. Where's it coming from? How can I relate the question back to it, connect things up? And it comes eventually after this meeting. It's good because even though I didn't know it before, I now start realizing, that's how you guys, that's what it must be. So I learn even from my own mistakes.
Yeah, me too. Sometimes what I do is I do like little cartoon notes or I do diagrams. So I'll just write a one-worded line that you're responsible. In this case, you're not little charts by hand. And a pen and paper to me is easier than using Word or Corel Draw, but it's very, very handy. But I'm going to tell you where the source of it in 5.2, 5B2, and everything else. All right, guys, we'll go to the next Zoom lesson. All right, I'm going to open up now.
Cool.
It's first brought, by the way, in the fifth daf in 5B2, where Pitt has got certain exemptions, okay? And in 5B2, it's written to exempt liability for utensils. And it carries on in 5B3, and it says that basically Rabbi Yehuda obligates for damage to utensils in the pit. So in other words, the rabbis say if the utensils get damaged in a pit, you're not responsible. According to Rabbi Yehuda, if you're obligated for damage to utensils in the pit. So pit was written separately to exempt it from liability for a person who is killed in it. This is also the source for it, because what does it mean? If a person's ox shall fall in it, which comes to exempt people. Are you with me? What it wants to bring here is, for example, if an ox wearing a saddle fell into a pit, the pit owner is liable for the damage caused to the ox, but is exempt for the damage caused to the saddle. So it's not only for utensils, it's for objects, stationary objects. This too is derived by the Gemara. There is a superfluidity in the verse. Even Rav Yehuda admits to this exemption. Okay, so that's as far as Rav Yehuda is concerned. Now, fire was written separately to exempt the owner from liability for hidden items destroyed by it. Okay? Why? Because anybody could claim that their Picasso was in a bale of hay. And according to Rav Yehuda, he obligates for damage to hidden items caused by fire, and he even comes to include one's field that needs to be replowed, or that the fire licked and scorched the stones of another person's field. Do you get what I'm saying, guys? So can everybody tell me what the rabbis say in regard to pit compared to Rav Yehuda?
Yeah. So
Jeff?
Yeah. So the rabbis say that in a pit, utensils you're not liable for utensils or objects.
Yes.
Rabbi Yehuda says that you are liable.
Yes.
And in a fire, the rabbis say that you're not liable for concealed items.
Yes.
And Rabbi Yehuda says that you are liable for concealed items.
Yes.
And you're liable for land that you're about to plow or something like that, you said.
Okay, so you're liable if it's already, your neighbor has plowed his field, but it scorches his stones, were you liable to replace those stones, or if he has to replow his field again? Gavin, that was an excellent recall. Excellent. All right. So now we're going to go back to our Mishnah in 10a1. Just hang on a second. Right, 10a1. And we're saying the following. Let me just read this quickly because Kevin has to go in 10 minutes. In some aspects, fire is more stringent than pit, and in some aspects, pit is more stringent than fire. In some aspects, pit is more stringent than fire, for a pit from its very inception is prone to damage. And if the owner of the pit entrusted it to guarding of a pit to a deaf, mute, insane person or minor, he is liable for any resulting damage, which is not true of fire. And in some aspects, fire is more stringent than pit, for its ways to fire to go forth and damage. And it is more to consume both items that are fit for it and items that are not fit for it, which are stringencies that are not true of pit. Okay, so just to explain, what does it mean that items are not fit for a fire? So people generally keep a fire going to keep us warm with wood or normal appropriate items. A person's utensils or items of value are not considered fit for it because it's not the normal way that we would keep a fire going. Does that make sense? And therefore, you are responsible if you damage somebody's utensils within a fire. Why is it not fit? Why are you exempt for utensils in a pit? Because basically utensils are considered unfit to damage for a pit because a pit is stationary and is only a threat to mobile creatures, not to lifeless objects. That's according to Rav Samson, Raphael Hirsch, and Mashesh Chochmah in Exodus chapter 21, verse 33 to 34. Okay? And there's a commentary by Rav Akiva Eiger. Does that make sense, guys? So what we're saying here is the Gemara notes what seems to be an omission from the Bryce's list, but let the Bryce also teach that ox is more stringent than pit. And Arthur touched on this before. Arthur, I don't know if you remember, you said something about that ox is liable for things that pit is not. And this is with regards to utensils. If an ox, in terms of carrying damage, kicks a utensil in temper or breaks something, the owner of the ox is responsible to pay. You exempt in a pit. Okay. Arthur, you there?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Fine. The Gemara answers, whose opinion does this brisa reflect? It reflects the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, who obligates the owner for damage caused to utensils in a pit. Thus, the ox and the pit are alike according to this law. Okay. So, the Gemara challenges interpretation. Why does it challenge it? Because it says fire is more stringent than pit, because it says with fire you're responsible for utensils. Does that make sense? So we're saying it doesn't make sense as if this brisa reflects the opinion of Rav Yehuda, because Rav Yehuda obligates for utensils in a pit, apart from in a fire, which everybody agrees with. So he said it doesn't make sense that this brisa reflects the opinion of Rav Yehuda. So, if the brisa follows the opinion of Rav Yehuda, another difficulty emerges. Let's consider the final case. Fire is more stringent than pit, for its way of fire is to go forth and damage, and it's more to consume both items that are fit for it and items that are not for it, which are stringencies that are not true of pit. Items that are fit for it are utensils, are wood, for example, atzim, wood, normal consumables that you stoke a fire with, and items that are not fit for it, utensils. And the Bryces state this stringency of being liable for items that are not fit for it is a feature which is not true of pit. Thus, the Bryce is teaching that the owner of a pit is not liable for damage for utensils. But the Bryce reflects the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that this is not true. For you've said that Rav Yehuda obligates the owner for damage caused by utensils in a pit. Does that make sense, guys? So initially what they're saying with this brisa is this comes from Rav Yehuda, and we're saying it doesn't make sense because it's already saying that a fire is more stringent than a pit because you have to pay for utensils, whereas pit you don't, which seems to reflect the opinion of the rabbis. So the Gemara is going to try and offer another answer. So in fact, the brisa reflects the view of the rabbis who exempt the owner of a pit for damage caused to utensils. And the mission of the stringency of ox over pit does not pose a difficulty, for the Tana taught only some of the stringencies and left out others. So let me tell you what I'm saying here. Do you remember when we learned about Rav Chisda? And Rav Chisda had 24 lists of damages. Do you remember? And the brisa ended up saying that Rav Chisda left out some damages. Do you remember this, guys?
Yeah.
So there's a Tanaic rule that if one damager is left out, it would be added to the list. It's only if it's two or more things that are left out that it's saying that there's something left out. In other words, if there's only one other item, it's always included, even if it's not as necessary. But if it's two or more, then it will mention it got left out. So in the case of Rav Chisda, do you remember it said there are actually 26 damages and Rav Chisda brought 24. So what were the two he left out? He left out an informer, and he left out of somebody that destroys a sacrifice by pigel, which means he eats it after the appointed time, which means that he must reimburse the person that gave the sacrifice because he had to eat it within the prescribed time. So in that case, there were two that were left out. But if it's one, then it's included in the main list. More than two, it's left out, and they have to state it. So the Gemara answers he left out the exemption for concealed items, which only applies to fire and not to the other